Hi everyone. So we're going to work on the quadratic formula. I feel like we've talked about it in past math classes, but I love the quadratic formula. It's one of the Pythagorean theorem. You just know it. So that's how I feel about the quadratic formula. It's something that you just need to know. It solves a lot of things. All right, so we're going to solve the quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. Now the quadratic formula can be used for any quadratic. Okay, so any ax squared plus bx plus c. But remember, we got to get it equal to 0, okay? And we want it in that order. And things that we want to remember is that we always want to identify who is A, B, and C. So identify your A, your B, and C. It's going to make your life easier. And we always want to remember it's all over 2A. People have a tendency to just like stop. And just put the square root part over 2a, or they start dividing things that shouldn't be divided. So just keep that in mind. All right, so here it is. Solutions for ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 as long as a does not equal 0. As x equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now there is a way to figure out where this comes from. It is derived from the quadratic form ax squared plus bx plus c by using completing the square. We're not going to get into that. All right, so just kind of take a grain of salt that it actually does work. All right, so let's do this. We're going to solve a couple of these, but the first step would be to make sure this is equal to 0 and make sure it's in order. So I'm going to add the 3. Alright, so then I'm going to identify who's A, who's B, and who's C. Okay, so A is always in front of your squared. B is always in front of the x. And C is your constant. Now the thing about quadratic formula, it only uses the numbers, does not use the variables. Okay, so the more you write it, the more often you're going to remember it. So let's write it. Okay, so it's the opposite of B. So if B is positive, it becomes negative. If it's negative, it becomes positive. So we're going to go negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 8 squared minus 4. A is 5. C is 3. All over 2 times 5. So negative 8 plus or minus the square root, 64, so that's 20 times 3 is minus 60, all over 10. Okay, let's keep going. So we're going to go negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 4, all over 10. Now we can take the square root of 4, so that's a nice perfect. So let's create 2 expressions, one with the positive and one with the negative, okay, because the square root of 4 is 2, and come up with our 2 solutions. So negative 8 plus 2 is negative 6 over 10. We can reduce that to negative 3 over 5, and this would be negative 10 over 10, which reduces to negative 1. So our solutions here is that x equals negative 3/5 and x equals negative 1. And there are your answers. So it does take longer than, let's say, factoring. But I like quadratic formula because it's guaranteed to give you the right answer as long as your computations are right. You know, there's no guess and check. You put the numbers in, you put the formula in, and boom, there's your answer. Okay. All right. So let's try this one. Okay. A, B, C. All right, so A is 12, B is negative 8, and C is negative 15. Okay, so let's put our information in. Okay, again, I'm going to write it so we get comfortable with the formula. So the opposite of negative 8 plus or minus negative 8 squared minus 4. A is 12. C is negative 15. I am definitely going to need my calculator for this. All over 2 times 12. Okay. So my app that I use shuts off if I open up my calculator. So I'm just going to use the one I have on my desk and not the one online. Okay? All right, so this is going to be 8 plus or minus the square root 64. All right, so minus 4, so it's going to be minus, and then we have 4 times 12 times negative 15. So that's minus negative 720, which actually becomes plus 720. Okay, so this becomes 64 plus 720. So 8 plus or minus the square root of 784 all over 24. So now I'm going to check and see if 784 is a perfect square. It is. It's 28. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so we're going to create our 2. So 8 plus 28, whole thing over 24. 8 minus 28 all over 24. So 8 plus 28 divided by 24. Okay, so that's 1 1/2, or 3 halves. Let's write it as a fraction. So this is going to be negative, okay, so 8 minus 28 divided by 24. I don't know what that is. Negative 5 over 6. And there's your 2 solutions. Okay. All right, so we should be pretty comfortable with this quadratic formula. All right, so here's kind of like our summary to solve a quadratic equation. The equation can be written in ax squared equals p, or ax plus k quantity squared equals d. P and d are just numbers. Use the principle of square roots. If it doesn't, write the equation in ax squared plus bx plus c. Try factoring and the principles of 0. If it doesn't factor or it seems impossible, use the quadratic formula. You can use completing the square. Again, that's not a process that we're going to talk about. But I would always use the quadratic formula if it can't be factored. Okay? So solutions for a quadratic can always be found by using the quadratic formula. So there you go. It can always be found by using quadratic formula. All right, so let's define what it means to be a quadratic function. A second degree polynomial one is, okay, so this is basically if we write our equation as f of x. Okay, so this is what we would refer to as a second degree polynomial, right? Or quadratic. All right, so we're just going to refer to this as a second degree function now. So once we put the f of x there, we call it a second degree function. All right, so for the quadratic function given by f of that 3x squared minus 6x minus 4, find for all values of x for which f of x is equal to 0. Basically, that means solve the function, set it equal to 0, and tell me what x is. And again, why do we care? Because we're going to eventually graph, and this is where the graph crosses the x-axis. All right, so we're going to go and make this 3x squared minus 6x minus 4 is equal to 0. Okay, so I do not believe this factors. There are no factors in negative 12 that add up to negative 6. So let's identify who's A, who's B, who's C. Okay, so A is 3, B is negative 6, and C is negative 4. Okay, let's use our equation. All right, so we've written it a couple of times. So opposite of negative 6 plus or minus negative 6 squared minus 4. A is 3, C is negative 4. Extend my root here. Whole thing over 2 times 3. This is equal to 6 plus or minus the square root 36 minus, I believe this is negative 48, all over 6. Okay, so this is going to be plus, so 36 plus 48, 84. Okay, so in the past we just kind of left that, but we now know how to simplify a radical. So on the side, let's do 84. 2 is 42. 2 again is 21. 21 is 3 and 7. So we have a square, so this is my pair. So let's kind of go over here. So we're going to get 6 plus or minus the square root of 4. I guess we could have done that on the side. Square root of 21, whole thing over 6. So 6 plus or minus 2 square root of 21, all over 6. Okay, so you can leave it like that, or we can put the 6 underneath each individual one, and simplify each individual fraction. So this becomes 1 plus or minus the square root of 21 over 3. Okay, so you have a choice. We're going to want to get in the habit of simplifying, okay, just because it's going to make our lives easier. Okay. All right, so let's try and make these. These are going to get a little bit more difficult. Let's see. All right, so we're going to try and solve this. Notice that it is not an ax squared plus bx plus c form. So we're going to have to distribute the x. And we're going to have to distribute the 2. And now we can get it equal to 0. And I was like super excited. I think, oh, we can factor this, but there are no factors of 2 that add up to positive 1. So let's use our quadratic formula. So here a is 1, b is 1, and c is 2. All right, so let's see how this is going to come out. Negative 1 plus or minus, so that's 1 minus 8 over 2, so negative 1 plus or minus the square root of negative 7 all over 2. Negative 7 underneath the square root. We're going to use the I thing again. So negative 1 plus or minus I square root of 7 all over 2. Again, or you can split the there you go. Yeah, we're going to go with the, okay, and again, that tells us stuff. It tells us that the graph doesn't cross the x-axis. All right, time for a challenge. All right, find where these two functions are equal to each other. So 2 plus 7 over t and 4 over t squared. So 2 plus 7 over t is equal to 4 over t squared. This is a great review because we now have a rational equation, which means we're going to find the common denominator and everybody gets one. So everybody is going to get a t squared. Okay, so I'm going to multiply everybody by t squared. Okay, so we get 2t squared plus 7t squared over t equals 4t squared over t squared. Now we should see that these are going to cancel and we're left with just a t here. So 2t squared plus 7t is equal to 4. Subtract the 4. Now we're in the form that we need to identify who's A, who's B, and who's C. Okay, so A is 2. B is 7, and C is negative 4. Okay, so let's write our quadratic equation, quadratic formula. Put our values in. So x, in this case t, because we're talking about t as our variable, t is equal to negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 7 squared minus 4. A is 2, and C is negative 4, all over 2 times 2. Negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 49 minus negative 32, all over 4. So negative 7 plus or minus, all right, 49 plus 32. I got 81. Oh, that's nice. I like when they come out nice numbers. All right, so we can do this. Negative 7 plus 9 all over 4. Negative 7 minus 9 all over 4. So this is going to be 2 over 4, which is 1/2. And this is going to be negative 16 over 4, which is negative 4. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at all the different methods that we've talked about. I know we didn't talk about completing the square, so I'm just going to put that little x over top of him. Because, and to be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of completing the square. So, and it's not like we don't need to know it. If we need to know the process, we'll visit that, but quadratic formula does the same thing. So, and it's a headache. All right, so we can factor. Sometimes it's really, really fast, but it doesn't always work for every single equation. Principal square roots, where we square root both sides, that's great as long as there's no like B or C. And then we may have to like factor and stuff, so that's not going to be a point. But the quadratic formula works for everybody. And it's slower because there's a lot more like little computation with it, but I feel like that's your like guaranteed to give you the right answer kind of thing. All right, let me know if you have any questions, guys. I apologize for the lateness. Hopefully, okay, if you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll talk to you again real soon.